You've got questions, we've got answers.
And I think that makes your pathway to university a lot easier.
The brain,
especially the first year if you pick the right subjects in year 11 and 12.
Information.
Here, and those signals run down through the spine.
Here in our studio, we'll be bringing you the answer to these questions and more. Join us for InfoMate. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to another episode of InfoMate. We've discussed the recent push to get more people to cycle, with over 3.7 million Aussies riding in a typical week. Most of us think that you simply get on the bike and you ride, but there's more to it than that. You need to know how to take care of your bike and the various accessories available to you to complete your riding experience. But for anyone who is serious about riding, you will know that ensuring your bike is looked after is crucial to getting a great riding experience. There are a multitude of accessories and options available to customise your bike to your personal preference. To discuss some of these customization and accessories, we have the pleasure of being joined in the studio again by Faisal, Javed and Ahmed. Thanks for joining us in today's program.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Welcome.
Now Faisal, we've got so much stuff on this table here, I don't even know where to begin, but I think, look, we'll start at the bottom of our bikes and work up. So I noticed that on this e-bike that we've got here, the tyres are absolutely enormous.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a bit about why a mountain bike has such large tyres?
Yeah, look, there is a lot of information. It can become overwhelming. But suffice to say, just by way of comparison, this is a road bike tyre. I will get Java to talk more about that later on. It's a lot thinner, and that's for a reason. The mountain bike tyres are a lot thicker because really what we do when we ride the trails is we want friction, we want grip, right? So a wider tyre will give us more grip.
Okay.
To add to that, we also talk about the tyre pressures themselves. So these tyres, if they are fully pumped up, they will provide less friction, thus providing less grip. So what we do when we ride the trails is we take the tyre pressure out. Now, it's not the same tyre pressure we would ride around on if we were riding around on the road, for example, where we actually want less friction. So yeah, with these with these tyres in particular, they're 2.8 inches wide. Mountain bike tyres can range anywhere from, well, you get fat tyres which are upwards of 5 inches. And then they can get down to just above an inch, you know. So it depends on what purpose or what sort of riding you're doing is what it boils down to. Yep.
I'm assuming that you can change some of these tread patterns on these as well, depending on your riding style. You can go for aggressive or smoother tread.
Yeah, once again, it depends on what sorts of riding you're doing. For example, downhill bike riding, you need a much more aggressive tread pattern. Enduro bike riding, this is the tread pattern you're looking for when you're riding enduro riding. These are just different styles of mountain bike riding because, you know, contrary to popular belief, it's not just one thing anymore where you're just mountain bike riding. It's divided up into many different categories.
Yeah. So Javed, I see there you've got a tyre that looks tiny in comparison to this one we were just talking about. Now, why do you need a smaller tyre for a road bike?
Right, so these are measured now in millimetres and the intention is to reduce resistance or drag and increase speeds. And again, the wheel sets or the tyres used depends on what type of race or style of riding that you do. So for example, if you're in a time trial, again, your wheel set will look different to a criterium perhaps, or if you're riding through the mountains in France, you know, with a long day ahead, 200 kilometres of climbing, again, there may be changes in the type of tyres that you use. Tyre pressures become critical, just like mountain biking, and you've got to suit them to the conditions really.
So one size doesn't really fit all?
No, not really, but you know, like we said in our previous conversation, that if you want to just get out there and do it for fitness, then it doesn't really matter. Get out there and enjoy it. But if you're more of a professional rider or seeking those sort of heights, then you've got to consider your wheel set. And again, you're looking at big dollars there too. But to get started, it's absolutely fine. Yeah.
Okay. So you wouldn't want something like this on a road bike?
No, of course not. But then you've got, you know, cyclocross type of cycling where the bike looks like a road bike, but they thrash it through mud and obstacles, you know, and again, you'd have a different structure of wheels. The tyres have more grip and they're slightly bigger than
so
these.
So it's those hybrid disciplines between mountain biking and road biking. There's a grey area in the middle emerging now, isn't there?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Now, Faisal, if I can ask you, people usually have the tube tyres in their tyres at the moment where we're running inner tubes.
Yep.
Is that the only option that people have?
No, so look, for a very long time, bicycles or mountain bikes ran tubes. There are inherent problems with tubes. There are also many advantages with tubes. Nowadays,
what does it look like?
yeah, absolutely. Look, this is a tube, and me personally, I'm still running tubes in my tyres. So what happens is this goes into the tyre itself, and then when you inflate it with air, it's the thing that pushes the tyre out and gives it that firmness. There is also another option where you don't actually have to insert a tube at all. The tyres are specifically designed so you can inflate the tyre as is without a tube. Now, the advantages that offers is if you end up with a puncture, for example, you're riding over thorns. If you end up with a puncture because of thorns, or road riding, you've ridden over glass or whatever the case may be, within that tubeless tyre there is a fluid, and that fluid, when it's exposed to air, will start to harden. So what happens is, as the tyre rolls, that fluid fills any holes that may have been put into that tyre from, as I said earlier on, a thorn or anything else, a binder, yep. And then that fluid will fill those holes, and as the tyre's rolling, it'll just dry.
I noticed that we've got some sealant over there as well. Can you show that to the camera there?
Absolutely. This is the sort of sealant we talk about. So the sealant is filled into the tyre,
Yep.
and then the tyre is expanded rapidly so that the beads fit into the rim,
Okay.
and then no air. The theory is that no air leaks out, and then as you're riding, as I said, the fluid just moves along, and if there's a puncture, it'll just fill the hole. Yeah, it's a very good system. There are certain issues with it. For example, you need to have this sealant replaced periodically. Apparently, there are newer sealants coming out where they don't need to be replaced. You just put them in the tyre and you can leave them in there. You can ride around. Yeah, you can do it yourself. It is a little bit of a messy process. It can become messy. Yep. The bike shops are happy to do it for you. They charge a minimal price for it. It's not really all that much. Or you can just look on the internet, and there's plenty of information out there on the internet, on YouTube itself, about how to do these things.
I did note that on this bike, which is mine actually here, that this does run tubeless, whereas you mentioned that you don't. And I must say that the point that you mentioned about the thorns has saved me at least 5 times from just getting the sealant to fill those holes, so I'm not getting stuck out in the middle of nowhere 20, 30, 40 kilometres from home, having to either replace the tube, or if I don't have any accessories on, walking my bike home.
Yeah, and you work and live in rural New South Wales, so it's literally in the scrub.
It's been a saver. My first trip, when I didn't have tubeless tyres, I got the bindies, didn't have any spare stuff with me on my first ride after a while, and had to carry the bike back. So.
And it's not a light bike.
No, it's not a light bike. It's quite unfortunate.
Some people often wonder just how many punches that tyre will suffer before it's unusable. Some of the stuff I've seen is very, very impressive. I've seen guys ride their bike over a plank of wood with nails sticking out of it, and they just ride back and forth, and they'll do it time and time again, and the sealant will actually continue to seal those holes. You'll lose a little bit of tyre pressure every time, but it's tiny, it's nominal, it's really not much. Obviously, the more tyre pressure you lose, you're going to have to at some point stop. If you are getting puncture after puncture, as you said your experience was, then you may have to stop and reinflate your tyres.
Also, with the tubes, you'd get different grades. My experience has been, if you spend a bit more on your inner tubes, that'll,
get a bit thicker, maybe.
Yeah, a bit thicker, and it prevents those.
Do you need inner tubes for road bikes as well?
Yeah. Well, we can do the same thing as what Faisal just mentioned, tubeless.
Or tubed?
Tube.
Now, is it something that you would carry with you when you're riding as a spare?
Yes. I mean, believe it or not, it does happen even on the main roads. And some of the main roads are filthy, let's face it, and it does happen. So more often than we think. Yeah,
ideally speaking, you would carry a tube with you, and this is my spare tube. I carry this with me everywhere I go, but sometimes one tube isn't enough. You end up riding in terrain, especially off the track, one tube isn't enough. So in that case, there are other options out there where when you've expended one tube, you can take a tyre repair kit with you, and if there is a hole that occurs in the tube, then you can just use the tyre repair kit to patch it up.
A bit of a glue.
Yeah, absolutely. But I would advise. I mean, look, people say that they last for a very long time, and you can just leave that tyre in your bike. But I'd advise, if you want to stay on the safe side, as soon as you can get to a place where you put a new tube in your bike, just do it. And they're not expensive, so it's not a real big deal.
That's right.
Good. So if you've run out of air, or if you had a puncture jar, how would you reinflate your tyres on the track?
Well,
what options do you have?
Yeah, multiple methods. You've got your conventional bike pumps.
Yep.
Or we can use the CO cartridges. I think you've got them there.
Yeah.
And same thing as in mountain biking. You get different valve adapters here, and you just plug it in, and away you go.
So that's it. Just efficient. One big, and it fills your tyre up. You're good to go.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So they're a one-time use only type still.
Yeah, that's exactly right. One use.
Yep.
But they do tend, if you can get yourself to a bike pump, and inflate the air, you do that because this tends to leak out of the tubes eventually. So the best way would be a bike pump, but without a shadow of doubt, always have this as part of your kit. Yeah, 100%.
So Faisal, I noticed that we've got your pump here on the table as well. This is something that you carry with you?
Yeah, look, this is a portable bike pump.
Yep.
Obviously, the advantage being that you can move it around with you. It stays in my backpack at all times, and if we do end up having a puncture off the beaten track, we can use this thing to inflate the tyre. Now, the only problem with this is, as you can imagine, with the size of that chamber, it's not going to put a lot of air into the tyre for every pump, every stroke. It takes a long time, and it can be muscle building work. Yeah, absolutely. On top of the bike workout, this gives you a workout too. It works the arms out. There are other options out there.
And that fits on the frame comfortably, or in your bike bag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep,
Several
absolutely.
different options to carry it around.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it. As I said, it's portable. That is the beauty of it. There are other options. If you have the opportunity, then I would recommend using a pump like this one.
That looks like something that you keep at home?
Yeah, you can keep this at home or keep this in your car.
Okay.
And before you go out on the ride, just make sure your tyres are at the correct tyre pressure, and this will help you. It just reduces the amount of work you have to do. Essentially, that's all really it boils down to.
When you're out
And
on
it caters for all the valve
Yeah,
types.
absolutely. So for those who don't know, on bicycles there are different valves. There's a Presta valve and a Schrader valve, and both these pumps have the fittings for both valves. So you don't end up in dire straits if you have a puncture. That's right.
So you mentioned talking about the pressures. Is that something that we can control when we're out on the ride? How do we know how many PSI we're running in these tyres?
Actually, just on that, this device here, this is a tyre pressure indicator, and it tells you exactly how much tyre pressure you have in your tyres, so that you can inflate it to the correct. You can inflate it the correct amount. Now, there are people out there who do a lot of riding, and they can actually do it by feel. So they can feel the tyre and they think, well, this is pretty good for this terrain, but you need a lot of experience and you need to know what you're doing. Me personally, I prefer to use this thing.
That looks small enough to keep with you.
Absolutely. So all this stuff, that's the beauty of this stuff, all this portable stuff, it can actually be kept in a pack. And I have a pack right here, which I can show you. This is a pack specific to mountain biking. So in this pack, there is a water bladder. As you can see, there's the tube for the water bladder. It sort of lives in the back of the pack here, and that takes 3 litres of water. So there is...
So you can carry 3 litres of water?
You can carry 3 litres of water, absolutely, yeah. So that it reduces the chance of you actually running out in the field. It's got the normal backpack space for all the stuff that we mentioned here, your safety gear, knee pads, gloves, all this other maintenance gear that we've got here.
You seem to fit it all into your pack here.
Yeah, it all fits quite nicely. There's even a first aid pack. I carry a first aid pack, which is just over here. And that's got all the bits and pieces necessary in case you do have a stack, because an accident, because let's face it, cycling can be dangerous. If you fall off the bike at speed, you're probably going to do yourself an injury. So that's the first aid kit. Also, the beauty of this pack is that it has an integrated tool section built into it.
Yep.
So in that I carry some lube for the bike. Also carry bits and pieces, odds and ends that most people probably wouldn't think to pack, such as some tape, because that'll get you out of a sticky situation, excuse the pun. There are tyre levers for bikes, so that if you do have a puncture, you can get the tyre off, and these are a very simple affair. They're simply 2 bits of plastic, and you just use them in unison to lever the tyre off the rim. Also, we come down to some other tools that we have here. This is a specific tool for cycling, and it's all collapsible, it's all foldable, and it has a whole range of tools which can be used.
You might need for a bit of basic bike maintenance when you're out on the track.
Correct, because look, it's always a good idea, even before you get out on the trek, to just go over your bike, make sure everything's tight, make sure nothing's rattle loose, because especially riding off the trail, there can be quite a lot of stress and strain on that bike.
Now, remembering he's on an e-bike, so he's got his kitchen sink with him, so that's fine. But if you're on a mountain bike without the electrics or on a road bike,
you might not want to carry.
You wouldn't be carrying all this around.
Or in the backpack. Now, we've got some gear here that you're fond of, that you've been riding, that you mentioned in your previous production. Can you tell us a bit about what's that green? Is that a helmet over there?
Yes, it is. So this obviously is to make sure you don't hurt your head in any way. and it's quite useful. You put it on your head.
So you make sure that that's fitted nice and tight and
You
secure under your chin
tighten
there?
it here.
Yep.
And you can, what do you call it? You have to. You can,
so it's adjustable to fit what you need it
adjustable.
to there.
Yeah,
Excellent.
all good.
Now, you also mentioned that you got hurt in the chest in our previous episode here. So what did you do to prevent that?
So you put this on and you strap it all up.
So what's this, if you don't mind me asking?
If
It's a bit of chest protection, is it?
Yeah, chest protection. So if you stack it, and like I said, if you don't have the hand grip on it, it might hit your chest, but it won't do anything. Like Ondemand, nothing happens.
Yeah, very good.
And
So it's a bit of chest protection for your chest and your back as well. It looks like you've got both sides covered. Your back and kidneys
so
protection.
it's
There.
shock absorbent too.
Yeah, wow. And Javid, did you wear one of these when you were a kid?
No, I wish I did. I've had my fair share of stacks, let me tell you.
Yeah.
You know, on the old BMXs, you can't go wrong with them, but when you come off, everything falls apart. That's
So you're
for
trying
sure.
to prevent that on the
Oh
next
yes,
generation,
even
trying to take
now,
precautions?
yeah, you see the guys on the mountain bike trails, even the guys here, like Faisal and yourself. What you guys do is just extraordinary. Coming down those hills at 65 k's. I'm not interested because I've been there, I've done that, and at my age now, the last thing I want to do is break things. I mean, you snapped a rib recently.
Yeah, I fell off the bike, and look, that was
Were
more.
you wearing a chest protection?
No, I
belt?
wasn't.
No,
Hence the
well,
reason I
yeah,
hurt
maybe,
myself.
yeah,
Maybe
you
I
hurt
need to
yourself.
wear them, and it might be a bit small. But this is the thing. You may be the best rider in the world, but if your bike isn't adjusted correctly, for example, as we were talking about with those tyre pressures, and even the shock system, if it's not correctly adjusted, you're going to end up coming off that bike. So it pays to make sure that when you buy a bike with all these bits and pieces, excuse me, that you go and make that it's specifically geared for you.
What you need to do. So we've covered the helmet and a chest plate, but I noticed that there's some other bits and pieces over here. Faisal, can you tell us about what's this one over here?
Yeah, absolutely. So here we have, these are my knee pads.
Yep.
And the reason I got these particular knee pads, look, with knee pads, the big thing is most people don't, well, I won't say most people don't wear them because they're not comfortable. They are uncomfortable, they chafe over time. So I did a lot of research before I went and purchased these, and the main reason for that was comfort, and that needs to be balanced with protection because there's no point being comfortable if it's not going to protect you. So these things are really good because they allow a lot of airflow and they just stay in your leg. They don't move up and down. The problem with knee pads especially is they move up and down on people's legs, and then they just sort of get sick of them and they don't wear them again. But with these, I haven't had a problem at all. These stay on the legs as you're pedaling, as your legs articulating, and they don't seem to move. And they're very comfortable, as I say, they let the air through, so I don't get too hot.
Very good.
It's a balancing act. Yes, you may be uncomfortable. Yes, you may be a bit hot if you're wearing all this stuff. But at the end of the day, do you want to be a bit hot or do you want to be a bit hurt?
Safe.
You've got to ask yourself that. Gloves, again.
Hand protection?
Yeah, hand protection, absolutely. And look, with the hand protection, a number of reasons for it. Not only protection, but they actually offer a little bit more grip because when you're riding, you sweat. And when your hands sweat, they tend to move around in the handlebars. It's very uncomfortable and you can't control the bike as well as you would like to. So gloves assist with that. They prevent that slipping on the handlebars.
Yeah, 100%. You come off also. You've got the gloves that
Yeah,
protect
that's a
you.
good call. Yeah, absolutely.
What about your eyes, Javid? Do you need any protection for your eyes? Glasses or goggles?
Yeah, always. Look, you get, obviously, if you ride in the dark or if you are in Europe and you're riding early in the mornings or throughout the day, it gets dark. So the point I'm making, you can get different lenses, transparent, dark, obviously. So without, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, you don't want rocks and bugs and stuff
Bugs,
flicking in
yeah,
your
especially
eyes.
in Australian conditions.
Yeah, brilliant.
Even just the air. When you're riding fast enough, on a cold morning, once that air starts hitting your eyes, you'll know it. You know you're alive.
Well, we've got the issue of condensation and all that, but you work it out.
Yeah,
Right?
Absolutely.
so it's a bit of everything.
Yeah.
So I've noticed that we've got some shoes here as well. Javid, can you tell us a bit about those shoes there?
Yeah,
Do
well,
they have serve a purpose?
yeah, that's exactly right. I've had these for about 10 years. So when I first started, obviously, years ago, as a kid, it was just ordinary shoes. But then when I switched over to mountain biking and also road riding, I bought these. These are Shimano SPDs. So they've got on the rear end what they call clipless, so they engage with the pedals.
So your feet are fixed?
Your feet are fixed, but the pedals I have a dual purpose. So I've got flats on one side and they clip on the other.
Yep.
So if I want to just commute, go to the local shops or whatever, I can. So I don't have to wear these. So I've had these for 10 years. You can see they're doing pretty well out there in the bush. So you unclip and you just use it as an ordinary shoe.
So
Not as comfortable as a hiking boot, obviously, but it does the job.
Does the job. So what's the benefits of having your feet clipped into the bike?
Well, the research finds, and my experience is that it increases efficiencies. It allows what they call that cadence, that sweet moment, that flow, the RPM.
Yep.
So once you're clipped in, you're increasing your efficiencies, increasing speeds, and allowing for the body and the bike to run better.
Yeah, okay. And Faisal, I noticed that the mountain bike is slightly different. Javed mentioned it before with the flats.
Yep.
What's he talking about when he says flats?
So fundamentally, I say there are two different sorts of pedals that most people use. Javed's already mentioned the clipless.
Yep.
Believe it or not, it may seem a little bit odd that they're called clipless, but they actually clip in.
Yep.
It's because the original clipped pedals from the 90s actually had a little bit of a harness that your foot fit into, and they were called clips.
So the terms just carried on over the
Yeah,
years?
so the terms just, well, they're not, they don't have those clips anymore, so they're clipless.
Yep.
We also have flat pedals, which is the pedals that you see here, and these can be ridden with any shoe, any flat sort of shoe. Ideally speaking, you want a shoe that's got a rigid base because it gives you the most amount of grip. Myself, personally, I ride on flats. I just find, for me, that I have more control of the bike, and if I need to take my feet off the pedals, I can do that easily. I mean, once you get used to clips, I believe it's very simple. It's second nature. You can just take your foot off, and it's all, the way.
You've got to get used to it though, because you will fall.
Yeah.
You've got to get used to it. You're fixed.
Yeah.
You're approaching a traffic light or a hazard suddenly appears on the road, and you haven't got that habit of unclipping. You simply drop. So
I just didn't want to be that person that at a traffic light and you just fall over like a tree. You fell the tree,
So we've got some shoes for flat mountain bike riding here too. Can you tell us a bit about the benefit of this compared to, say, Javed was showing us the clips on the bottom of the other one?
As I said earlier on, this is a very rigid sole compared to your normal walking shoes, which, you want them to be comfortable. You want them to be, they're geared specifically towards walking. This has to serve a bit of a dual purpose. So what happens is this grip, the grip on these are mountain biking shoes, these are cycling shoes. Yep. You can use any shoe with a flat bottom, but these are specifically geared to work with flat pedals. And the thing with the flat pedals is they have these nubs or pins, if you will, and the pins provide extreme grip. So when you're pedaling, your foot will not slip, or there's a less chance that your foot's going to actually slip off that pedal, because that's what you don't want. You're committed to the stroke, and the worst thing that can happen is your foot slips off the pedal, and then you end up doing what I did and falling off the bike and hurting yourself.
It's a bit of a depending on what sort of riding you're doing. Maybe clips seem to be more preferred for road riding, whereas flat, some people prefer for mountain biking due to the...
Those heroes on mountain bikes, they're clipped in as well,
Yeah,
and taking those turns, descending, it's just amazing.
Personal preference.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but on the road bikes, it's a no-brainer. You'd go with clip-in.
So I can tell you, this bike behind me here looks pretty filthy. You can tell there's a bit of dirt here. Now, Faisal, is it something you do when you get home? Do you wash your bike?
Look, just like with a car, the more maintenance that you do or that you perform upon your bicycle, the more longevity you're going to get out of it. If you want your bicycle to last, you need to look after it. So when I ride on the trails, yes, I'll come home. As you can see, this chain is it hasn't been cleaned in a while, but that will just reduce the life of your chain and your drivetrain. So yeah, look, it just it increases wear and tear. So yes, after you come back from a ride, you give it a good wash. You're using some of the commercially available products, such as this stuff here, this cleaner here. Get rid of everything, get rid of the grit, get rid of the old oil, the old lubricant that you have on there, and then basically you just re-lubricate it. You don't want it sopping wet so there's lubricant dripping off it. You just re-lubricate it, wipe off the excess lubricant, and you're good to go.
Javed, I know you're fastidious. You ensure you wash your bike after every ride. You can tell this one hasn't been done in a while. Sometimes people just don't get around to it. But you, and it's every ride, it's your habit of getting back home and making sure your bike's clean.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's just my personality, I suppose. But like Faisal said, if you want your bike to last, like anything, or your vehicle, your home, etc., give it a good clean.
Take care of it.
Yeah, that's what I do. You know, living in a semi-rural area, it does get filthy in the back roads there.
Yep.
So you just get back, give it a spray down, and that's it.
Notice we've got some brushes and stuff here. Is that some stuff you can use here to clean your bike?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So same exactly that.
Yeah, there are different ways of cleaning the bike. Some people take the chain off and they just dip it into some sort of solution in order to give it a good clean. They just leave it in there for a while. All the grit and dirt and all the old oil comes off it. And they just put it back on and they lube it up.
Yep.
There are other options. This is what I use personally. This is a chain bath. You just put it onto the chain, fill it with whatever liquid you're using that you want to clean the chain with, and then you just run the chain. And there are brushes inside it. It runs through the liquid and it cleans the chain. And I find it does an excellent job. So that's what I use personally. And then there's the old faithful way of doing it, where you just get a hose, a brush, your cleaning solution, and just go at it.
Bit of elbow grease.
Yep, old school.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Degreaser.
Yeah.
Yeah, degrees is good.
So the last bit I want to touch on, Javed, is lighting. How crucial is lighting for your bike?
Critical, day or night, front and rear. And these days you get lights that are integrated with cameras, so you can record on what's happening in the front and the rear, and useful for insurance purposes and so on.
Yep.
Technology coming out now with your head-up display on your bars, you can see what's happening in the rear. Yep. You can get indicators mounted on it. It depends on how sophisticated you want to get, but generally lights for the front and back, absolutely.
Especially when you're on the road, you want to be seen.
Yeah, no
Thanks.
doubt. And also your clothing, retro reflective clothing. Don't sort of camouflage with your surrounds. You want to stick out. That's the whole idea. I mean, you still remain fashionable. You still look good. I'm not saying you don't.
Yeah. You just want to make sure you be seen, be safe.
Simple as that.
So just real quickly, Faisal, you'd probably be able to reach it here. We've got a couple of different types of lights. Can you just tell us about them?
Yes, we're running a number of different lights on our different bikes. This light here, obviously the head part of it connects to the handlebars, and there is a separate battery pack which can be connected to yourself, or you can put it somewhere else on the bike, attach it somewhere else on the bike. What that allows for is that there's not this big, huge unit sitting on the handlebars of the bike getting in the way. It just allows a nice small sort of aerodynamic unit on the top.
So that one's got several different options.
Yep.
So that one, does it also fit on your helmet? So if you don't want to run it on your bike?
Yeah, absolutely. You can fit, and that's the beauty of this thing. You put this in a backpack or clip it on your belt, and you can place this onto your helmet, and then you don't have to run it on your bike. Myself personally, I actually run two lights. I have one on my helmet, and then I have one on my bike. That's my light just here. And the beauty of these lights is they're all rechargeable, and I think that's very important. You need a rechargeable light, and once again, if you're doing a lot of riding, just make sure you actually take them off and charge them, because odds are when you need them, they won't be ready for you. There is also a tail light. This is generally the configuration for tail lights. They just sort of, they'll have a bit of rubber on the back, which just fits around your seat post, and then they just face the back and they just flash. And speaking of which, all these lights have different modes.
Okay.
Some, they change the intensity of the light, and then certain lights will flash, or all lights will flash. And it's always a safer option to have a light that's flashing, because if people see that, it becomes it's more apparent.
Be seen, be safe.
The strobe at different intervals.
Javed, you did mention the insurances. Is that something that you have when you're riding? Insurance for your bike?
Yeah, I've taken out insurance for the actual bike, but also if I'm involved in an incident. And we need to cover the third party for property damage and also medicals. I've taken out that insurance too. So an important point there.
Yeah, it is, and I think that you might also have it,
Done the
Faisal.
same thing.
Yeah.
You can't mess around with this stuff. So
make sure yourself is insured, your equipment's insured, and then other people are insured as well.
Yeah, look, there's talk here in Australia to register bicycles as well because of the popularity that you've mentioned in your introduction. So I mean, that's
It's going there. Look, guys, thank you very much for joining us. We've covered a fair bit of information here, and I hope we've got that point across as well, that there's so much you can do to look after your bike. It's just, if you've got something, especially something that's expensive, you want to make sure you look after it. Isn't that the case?
And yourself.
And
look
yourself.
After the bike and look after
look
yourself.
after yourself. You're right.
That's the whole idea, isn't it?
Yep. You're going to keep wearing this safety equipment when you're riding?
Yep, my whole life.
Excellent, mate. Good work. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope we've shown you that there's so much information out there, so many accessories and options you have to be safe yourself while you're riding, to make sure you're looking after your bike and basic bike maintenance. And if you take note of all the stuff that you've seen here, you go out, you do your own research, make sure you talk to your bike shops, you look online to see the options that are available to suit your personal riding needs. Just make sure you look after yourself and you look after your bike. Thank you very much for watching. We look forward to bringing you another episode of InfoMate from MTA International, Australia Studios. Jazakumullah and Khudafez.